Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Porcupine Perspective, a show where Robert and I take a look at politics, philosophy, and current events through the lens of individual freedom and liberty, or as we like to call it around here, the Porcupine Perspective. Now, before we begin, I do want to take a moment to give a shout out to our sponsor, Strike Force Energy. It's an energy supplement that can be added to any beverage of your choice. Now, although Strike Force Energy has no sugar or calories, it is full of that kick some ass necessary to keep you in the fight. Visit them at strikeforceenergy.com and use promo code NOMORECANS, and you'll receive 20% off your order. Now, let's get into our show. Today, Robert and I were going to take a look at something we've been reading about in China. They are implementing this year a social credit score. Why should we be concerned about it, and does it have any implications or historical references to our current past? You got to tune in and find out. Robert, how you doing today, man?
Yeah, I'm doing all right. How about yourself?
Not too bad. I'm glad to get these holidays over with. I don't know about you.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. For whatever reason, the wife and I, whenever I have time off, we revert to almost like vampires. We end up all night and sleeping all day, and then trying to switch back is just it's horrible.
Yeah, and the bosses don't really appreciate that too much, do they?
No, no, things can go awry when you don't show up during the day.
Yeah, yeah, I could see where that would be a strong negative. You have to definitely have to load up on the caffeine for sure. All right. On this China thing, those of you that have not had an opportunity to take a look at it, it is something that they have been implementing slowly over the last year. It's going to basically take their facial recognition technology coupled with your social networking, and they're going to be able to determine a score or a worth you are to society. Sounds pretty Orwellian, if you ask me, but basically they're trying to get over the distrust that happened after Mao's Cultural Revolution, where you had family members ratting each other out, people that weren't quite communist enough or not really supportive of the party were being exposed and, of course, being led to labor camps and all manner of great Chinese things. So, what is there to be scared about with this? Obviously, we don't believe that the labor camps are still there, but, is there anything that you're concerned about when you hear about this, Robert?
Well, I mean, there's concern anytime when a particular government structure is rating your worth, rating your or deciding your ability for movement, whether it be in country or out of country, and basically, deciding over every aspect of your life due to regular conversations that you have with folks, with the social media aspect of it, including, your day-to-day interactions, and it's very, very scary.
Now, you had mentioned something about controlling your travel, like the way you move. What do you mean?
Yeah, that your the ability to even to get an air, get things like, if I'm not mistaken, train tickets, airplane tickets.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this is all, this is all tied to it. Your ability to get particular jobs, quote unquote, the best jobs or the better jobs. Uh, the ability for your kids to be able to go to good schools or the better schools. That will all be denied to you if your score is too low.
Man, that is atrocious. Hey, for most of us, I'm a parent myself. Some of that may not affect me. The ability to travel on the plane, the ability to hop on the train and go where I want. But you start doing stuff that's going to affect my kids. That is going to get my attention. It's going to get my attention pretty quickly. It's going to be hard to go the opposite direction if it's going to harm my children in any way.
Well, there's where you blew it. I think there it'd only be kid, but that
Oh
I get
yeah, it
the
is
I get
China.
the
You're
idea.
right. They still have that policy then.
I think so. I haven't checked into it lately, but I hadn't heard otherwise.
You mean you weren't filling out a visa? Go check it out, get some authentic Chinese food?
Not my first place. No.
No, no, no. There's probably some better over here, honestly. But no, you're absolutely right. And those of you that don't know what we're referencing, for a long time, as a matter of population control, China instituted a single child policy where you were only allowed to give birth to one child. And then with each generation, of course, you're cutting the number of people in half. At least that's the stated reason.
Yeah.
That's interesting. That's something we probably need to look at. Um, it is crazy some of the stuff I've seen that they've been able to do with the facial recognition in China. There's a story out where they actually were able to pick out a criminal in a massive crowd at a stadium that was jam packed. And just by scanning the crowd, they weren't necessarily looking for this particular individual, picked him out of a crowd, and he was in jail before the game even ended.
Well,
So,
if if you can do anything you're really focused on with a powerful enough database and computer. I mean, it's just a matter of flipping through images as they go by, and the computer will go ahead and pick out. Oh, now now imagine with this credit score thing, they tie in the same type of idea. Uh, they can decide where you're going at any time and whether you need to be there or not.
right. And if you are in the wrong place at the proverbial wrong time, then ding, your credit score goes down or worse.
Or the cuffs are on, one of the two.
Well, or worse, exactly. That would definitely be worse over there. I had
True enough.
read we're making some pretty interesting strides in that technology, not to deviate from China yet, but it was in the news. It was at a Taylor Swift concert that they've begun to install cameras at the kiosks. You know, the little ones that show you, okay, your ticket number is this, so you need to be on this level. Here's where the seat is. And these
Okay.
cameras take a look at people that are either walking by or looking for a place to sit, and it compares them with a database of known stalkers. Now, this particular article was about a Taylor Swift concert, and it was looking for, I think they wouldn't disclose the exact number on the list, but it was in the high 20s of people that they did not want at that event that there was actual restraining orders on. So we're already seeing it being used here as well.
Wow. That yeesh.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
gives you
it's
the
nothing
heebie
I like.
jeebies. Yeah, absolutely. Um, one of the arguments that I hear, and this is the argument that I would actually make, why I get concerned about this, is it appears that the Chinese government, and again, they're a single party system over there, the Communist Party, is trying to engineer behavior utilizing this new system. You know, social media is pretty popular. Many of you guys that have a Facebook account, Minds.com account, YouTube, whatever else, most people are glued to it, and they get upset when they get dinged or they don't get enough likes on a particular post. So I really think this is going to be an effective means of the government to be able to engineer behaviors that it deems are what it wants. And you could literally steer an entire society and not really have to do much other than alter the algorithm that determines whether or not what you're doing is good or bad and how it affects your credit score. I believe one of the tests they're doing right now, they're actually posting everyone in the village's score at a central location. So anyone can see everyone else's score at all times, and it's updated as close to live as you could absolutely get in a situation like this. You know, it's not like the credit scores here where, you know, it may take 24 hours or 48 hours for the ding to actually hit your score. It's almost live.
And from what I read, and that's bad enough, but from what I read, I believe it said that right now, which seems rather chaotic, it's more or less being controlled by locales.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a one universal thing as of yet. So that means you could possibly have different sets of rules for depending where you are.
God, and can you imagine traveling to a different province and not knowing what their algorithm's going to be like? Come back with a
Yeah.
negative score, can't get a job, or worse, you can't get a ticket to get back home.
Well, it's the same thing as when you go to travel, checking where you're going to be traveling through and whether that gun on your hip is going to be allowed or not.
That's no doubt. Yeah, when we traveled to see family members, when we cross the Illinois border, or technically before the border, we have to get out and we have to store the weapons in compliant containers, separate ammunition, separate magazines, and none of it can be within reach just in case you get pulled over for that exact reason. Even though in the state that I'm located in, it's an open carry state. They don't care. As long as you're not out waving it around at people, then everything's fine. But no, that's an excellent point.
Yeah, so we do run into those aspects here to a certain extent.
Yeah, but it's not a camera tracking your movements. And what it reminded me the most of was Orwell's 1984, where they had the cameras in the TV sets and people would watch. Now, you didn't know if they were watching or not, but your reactions to what was being put on the TV could lead them to come to your house and arrest you. So if you weren't looking with enough happiness, had the fake smile, or paying attention like you were supposed to, then there was the chance that their version of the Gestapo in 1984, I can't remember what that group was, would come to your house and arrest you, and you would get re-educated.
Yeah, and I mean, uh, in one aspect, as far as the cameras go, all we can assume that's not done yet, but just think about how many red light cameras there are.
Oh God,
I
yes.
mean, yeah, and any of those can be implemented into any, you know, any use like that you wanted to, along with the, all the different cameras that are set up in different cities on all these different intersections and whatnot, just for the purpose of observation.
And if I remember correctly, in the article that I dug up, they were talking about in 2020, or maybe it was late 2019, integrating all the privately owned cameras into the same network. So that if you were to go into a shop, for instance, that had its own CCTV cameras in it, you would still be within view and subject to that algorithm based on what you were doing in that shop.
Yeah, I mean, I without a doubt, I could see that, see that being, a possibility. Thing is they have access to them if they want them anyway.
Yeah, exactly. It's just whether or not they integrate them into this big AI system or not, which is likely. Now, this sounds pretty Orwellian, like we mentioned before, but I mean, surely nothing like this is going on in the West, right?
I, as I know and you well know, I mean, we've done this in the past to, varying degrees, whether it be, citizens spying on each other, reporting on each other, or it be, setting up camps. Uh, the lesser known part of that, or, to most people, would be things that happened with the American Protection League, um, the Anti Yellow Dog Group, uh, the House on Un American Activities Committee. Uh, I mean, in these setups, you had, especially the Anti Yellow Dog Group, you had you know, new immigrants to the area, and they were told that in order to do their American duty and to be patriotic, they were to point out any abnormal behaviors on on any of their neighbors or anybody that they come in contact with to the authorities and to detail what these behaviors are, and ended up becoming really scary in the fact that you had other citizens surveilling and keeping notebooks and records on people, their comings and goings, exactly what they were doing. Did they pick their nose wrong? I mean, it just absolutely ridiculous. and in some instances, it led to violence against these individuals without any kind of trial or actual arrest by the authorities. And when I say violence against individuals, I'm talking about these people that were I don't know whether you want to call it a soft badge. I can't think of the almost like a deputization.
Hmm.
Uh, that you know they ended up using force against people that they saw as an issue, and that I would argue that that's even worse than what's going on in China.
No, I think I would agree. I want to delve in this, if you don't mind, just a little bit. This is kind of new to
Sure.
me. Now, did you say it was immigrants that were being deputized to watch other people, or was it people that were already considered citizens watching immigrants?
No, no, no. Maybe I didn't clarify that. Um, the they would use anybody, but uh, new immigrants to the country were easier to get to do this because they didn't have ties here, so to say,
Mm-hmm.
and it's easy to convince them that this is this is the way you be American. This is the way that you're, to be patriotic. Um, and given that mindset, why should they think otherwise?
Yeah,
Uh, they,
they're not going to know the culture. They're a new immigrant.
yeah, yeah, and they want to belong and they want to do their civic duty. They're wanting to, so in effect, I would argue that it's not so much, those folks' fault that were new to the nation that they were participating in this because, obviously they're eager to be a part of things and they're being told that this is a huge problem and they can help out greatly by doing this duty. And yeah, it went awry. It was terrible and ended up being a mess.
It's interesting that the immigrants would do that because you can only imagine a lot of them were leaving countries where that was the norm, where the and granted I don't know the exact time frame that this was happening. Was it like post World War II or
You could take that anywhere from, I think it's like around 1915 all the way to World War II.
okay?
Different facets of that from the beginning, all the way through McCarthyism.
Yeah, and McCarthyism is the one I'm more familiar with. Anyone that's studied American history hopefully knows about that, where they were so completely entranced with the idea that we were being infiltrated by communists, the Red Scare as it was, that it was a modern day Salem witch trial where they didn't have to have very much evidence. And it took up a lot of Congress's time. But I believe the FBI came under power or rose to power during this time, like really grew under J. Edgar Hoover, if I remember correctly, during this time, and he would keep
Mm.
tapes on people and use that as leverage to get them to do what he wanted.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's exactly right. And um, pretty much the way I view it is it's another one of those things where, you know, you had the Great Depression, things had gone horribly, and uh, so things were somewhat unstable. So you need a common foe, and that seemed like the one to grab at the time, I suppose.
Yeah, we definitely see that through time. Obviously, the Nazis were able to do that, and then with the use of the brown shirts, the fascists in Italy with what were they called there? We'd say the Gestapo, wasn't it? Or was
Yep.
that German?
What? Uh, you know what?
I don't remember. I guess it doesn't really matter, but
Yeah.
we we we've seen this before, where you have this rise of a common enemy, or at least one that's easily identifiable, and then whoever's in authority or whoever wants to rise in authority is able to seize that like a team of horses and just drive it into the ground, and the people willingly accept whatever. It doesn't matter, any loss of freedom, just so that this boogeyman, so to speak, doesn't get them. We saw it with
Yeah,
the Patriot Act, for instance.
yeah, and if you want to say we're coming full circle again, because it looks like people once again have picked Russia as the bad guy again,
Yeah,
in our current boogeyman.
yeah, and this time I would argue they're not nearly as powerful or as much of a threat, at least, as they were during those times. But I guess the record's got to go back to the beginning every now and then. We're not original over here. Now, the thing that strikes me the most about the West, or the version that I see happening in the West, is there seems to be this push or this behavioral modification that's happening through social media. I think the big difference here is that, in China, they only have the one party. So it's easier to be unified, and the government can kind of take control and spearhead that movement in order to make the populace comply to whatever behavioral parameters that they're looking at. Here in the United States, we've got a split party system, but the modification is still happening. And all you got to do is get on Facebook or watch the news. You see what happens. Anyone that speaks out, anyone that says something that is against the narrative, they lose their job, they lose their company. They are physically assaulted. They have people standing outside their house with their wife and kids at home, threatening to come in and cause harm. And like I said at the beginning, when there's implied harm to my children, that's when you're going to get a reaction out of people. And I mean, even now, I know you're fairly new to social media, and you've been lucky to have stayed out of it for as long as you have.
Thank
Every
God.
single time that I post something, I am worried, what is going to be the flag? And if that's not a cooling effect on speech, I don't know what is. And if it's not modifying behavior, I don't know what is.
Oh yeah, you end up. Oh, and just so everybody knows, the only reason I got on social media was for this. Um, Otherwise, I avoided it like the plague. I
It's
just
my
see the
fault, folks. You can blame me. Go ahead.
I see the nightmare that families turn into, and family, friends, and part of the problem is uh, eh, I guess one of the underlying problems is it links into the text generation where everybody sends words back and forth to each other. And the thing is, with just straight up words, there's no inflection. You can't tell if somebody's joking, and you're in an argument within a fraction of a second. Just
Absolutely.
absurd.
We have, and we've seen this effect before. It's something I've talked about. Um, we automatically assume the worst intentions whenever we read something from someone else. We automatically assume it is meant to cause as much harm as possible and is meant in the worst way possible. And then it leads to that fight, like you say. And it's almost like we're spoiling for a fight. And, and there are a lot of
Right.
people that just pull out completely. Just like, hey, you know what? I don't want to deal with this anymore. It's bad enough that I've got to deal with coworkers and bosses and family members like you talked about, and friends. But having to deal with some asshole that's 1,000 miles away from you, that that if you were to meet face to face, you probably wouldn't have an argument. You would be able to sit down and probably even have a beer with them and have a civil conversation. But somehow, some way, it's like behind Facebook, I'm this big 10-foot tall Superman that no harm can come to me.
And it, that aspect, the Facebook social media aspect ties into this also. For the simple fact, you do have a conversation with somebody, and the first thing people are trying to do, if you're talking about politics or anything related to it, is they're trying to tie you to a party within the first few sentences.
Oh yeah,
Um, and then once they do tie you to that, if it's not the party they're in, nothing you say can be valid, no matter how factual it is. It's completely gone, and which puts us in a fabulous spot because we don't have to just worry about one end; we have to worry about both parties.
which by definition makes us invalid in all things we say, because we're in violation of at least one, if not both of them, at any given time.
I'm, you know what? I'm perfectly good with that because I'll stay on the logic end of things. I don't prefer to be in the anti-logic.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. I think logic is the answer. To speak to this group thing you're talking about, you're right. It's almost like a job interview in that, you've got an employer that's asking you questions, but it's not necessarily exactly the answer that they're looking for. It's more how you phrase it so they can determine, you know, the truth in it. Because, if your employer asks you, okay, what's your best attribute? You and I both know you're not going to tell them, what is truly your best attribute. Or if they ask you what's negative, you're not going to tell, you can say, oh, nothing's negative at all. I love my job too much. That's what's negative about me. Yeah, whatever. Um, the questions seem to be more probing in nature to try to determine not only which party you're in, but which group within which party. Because then once I know that, then I can assign what I feel the characteristics of that group or party are to you, even though you as an individual may hold only one or two of those attributes. All of the negative attributes that group has are now yours, and there's nothing you can do or say that's going to get you out from underneath that.
I think you credit the general populace too much. Um, eh, my feeling no, they're looking at RRD, man. They're not looking to see whether you're conservative Republican or, you know, you know, you're conservative on family values, but you're liberal on social aspects. They aren't worried about any of that. They're looking for an RD, and that's real simple, two letters. It lets them file you accordingly.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. I can see a large range. And some of the people that I argue with, especially like even within the liberty movement, for instance, and maybe that's where I'm drawing some of my experiences from is, okay, are you a big L libertarian? Or are you a little L libertarian? Are you a pro-wall libertarian? Are you a open border libertarian? Are you an anarchist? Oh my God, you're an anarchist. Well, I can't have a conversation with you at all. That's what I'm, and I guess that's what I'm kind of drawing on. I haven't had to deal much with the R&D as you call it, but it makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, if and that's the difference. People, a lot of folks who will decide to go ahead and have discourse about stuff like that, stuff like this are going to be more informed if they're actually going to be active in, you know, uh, talking about this stuff. So they're going to have more knowledge of the different facets of libertarianism, or any group per se within the freedom movement. Uh, but by and large, that's not the norm. At least that's what I've found.
No, and I can definitely see that. I think the majority of people that just think in R&D have probably removed themselves from my friends list is what it's probably indicative of, because I've inevitably pissed off most of them, and I don't have to deal with it as much. But yeah, I can see it. I mean, some of the newspaper articles, or if you watch CNN or even Fox or either side, they seem to be more concerned with it. Even now, yeah, there's so much confusion on what the R&D even means. D is supposed to be anti-war. Well, Trump's pulling people out of Syria. Well, you can't do that. Wait a minute, I thought you were anti-war. But then again, you weren't anti-war under Obama, so maybe it makes sense. Do you guys even know what you stand for? And the answer is, of course, whatever you don't stand for is what they stand for, is what it seems to be.
Yeah, and that's all it is. Um, you've got a combination of that, pandering to different masses, and then just showing yourself different from the other, no matter whether it violates what your quote unquote principles are or not. And at the same time, over time, you've had the moving window, and then you've got the different parts of these parties pulling at each other, and it just it's mass confusion. And I mean, yeah, at the end of the day, both these parties essentially bleed into each other, and it's just like we were saying, It's the same end to be reached with different sets of means. That's all it is.
Now, a methodology of control of the masses, either overtly or covertly, either done by a single party system like we see in China or done through social media, as it is here, and through education and all that stuff. But it's kind of an interesting topic. It's one I have a feeling is going to come back up again, probably before too terrible long, because I don't see any significant changes on the horizon. Did you have anything else you wanted to add to it, or?
No, not particularly for this particular. I mean, to go into these other facets, I mean, we definitely have to make some separate shows.
Yeah, definitely. And it's something I wouldn't want to take a quick look at, but it would be interesting to look historically at some of the things that we've done that we don't really learn about anymore that are kind of distasteful, whether it be like the Japanese internment camps. You bring that up and people go, shh, 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 shh. No, we don't talk about that anymore.
Yeah, that's a, and then the spin-off of that is a whole nother episode in itself of the history we've erased from our books.
Exactly. All right. Well, I think that's a good enough place to go ahead and call it for our first episode. Folks, thanks for joining us today. We really appreciate it. We look forward to bringing another episode to you here soon. And until then, have a great day. Always look back over your shoulder. Waiting around to make your move. Don't hold back, come on and get down to it. Live your life the way that you wanna. Let your fire